Hi, everybody. It's Michelle Hill, your legacy builder at Winning Proof. And this is another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted. And I'm super excited today because I have David Bates on the other screen. Well, I guess I should point that way. I'm not sure which which direction, but the David Bates, he was part of uh, faith-driven entrepreneur group, and that's where we originally connected. And so I love what David does. I love his post on LinkedIn. So we're going to dive into that. So welcome, Dave. I'm so glad to have you on here.
I am glad to be here, and I always love having a conversation with you. So it's going to be great.
You'll be absolutely fine. We're just going to have a fun conversation, as I do with everybody. So I
They're
want
always fun.
people, I'm not going to read your bio. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But tell people who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Dave Bates. I am an executive coach. I work with founders. My purpose for work is to help there be less loneliness and isolation with people who are starting and growing their businesses before they get to a scale stage. So anywhere between the point where they're starting out and when they get to something that looks like scale of, three, five, $7 million of annual run rate. So anything before all of that, where they're trying to figure out how do I go to market, who's this for, what's the change that I'm going to help them achieve, and then how do I put the scaffolding in place in order to build a sustainable business that isn't going to fall apart as it gets to scale.
Okay, that makes sense. And I know there's a whole bunch more to that than what you just said. I know you do a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to dive into some of that. So I want to kind of start off and ask you, what is the main challenge that you see startups having that, everybody says, oh, most startups die within, the first 5 years, first 3 years, a lot of times. So what do you see as the biggest challenge that they face in business?
Oh goodness, to pin it down to one, it's there are many different things, and it is true that the statistics of company success, or what the Small Business Administration calls company death, they actually call it company death. They a lot of times it's a difficulty finding focus.
Mhm.
There is a fear that if I identify a really small market, it's going to be too small. And so founders and entrepreneurs tend to go really wide. And when they go really wide, it's very difficult for your ideal customer to see themselves in the problem that you're describing because you're trying to be really, really wide instead of being very targeted. And so I think that a lot of it roots in that question of who is it for and what is it for, like I mentioned in our intro.
Mhm.
What's the problem that you're solving for somebody, and who do they become because you helped them solve it? And that can feel really scary to be tight and small. The cool thing is, if you are able to get it small, then you create the opportunity to grow and maybe do other ones. But I think that's a big, big part, being focused.
Okay, you know what? I did not mute my phone. I'm going to do that, but in between, I'm so sorry. I've done that a couple of times, and this is one of those times. So,
Well,
all
you
right,
know
yeah.
what? When it's advertised as unscripted, you get unscripted kinds of things, don't you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, life happens. So, okay, so that really is a good point because I tell my book clients the same thing. And just
Hmm.
everybody, who's your book for? Who's the top two or three target readers? And everybody is not the right answer. So you're
Right.
saying the same thing with business. You cast too wide of a net, and it's going to be kind of have a lot of ambiguity as to people like, am I their client? Maybe I don't fit, maybe I do.
Yeah. When we used to coach in Seth Godin's workshops, we always used to say, if it's for everybody, it's for nobody. And so you really, really want people to be able to see the problem is and to see that you solve it for them. And we see this a lot in software in particular. People feel like they have to have a very, very robust software solution. And it's got to do this, and it's got to do that, and it's got to do the other. And it's true that over time it's going to do those things. But we are trying to get, for technical founders, for example, we're trying to get them to something that we call the smallest viable audience and the minimum viable product. People make this mistake in that they make the minimum product and it's not really viable. Or they make something that they think is viable, but it's not really minimum. And so it's very difficult to find the balance between what is a problem that I can solve that people will pay to have solved because it costs them more not to have the solution. And that is sort of the definition of the minimum viable product, not whatever lots of people are out there telling you that an MVP is. It's not a piece of software that's worthless. It's not broken. It solves a small problem that it costs somebody more if they don't have the solution than it costs them to pay you to solve it for them.
Yeah, that makes total sense on every level, because that's how people make millions is solving a problem that people have. And people, I mean, vacuums come to mind. People are
Mhm.
not going to get down on hands and knees and pick up every speck of dust on their carpet. Thus, a vacuum. They'll pay for that because it
Yeah.
saves time, it's efficient. It's a best example I can relate to what you're saying.
You know what I love about vacuums is it is a fantastic example because there are some people who don't want a vacuum and a Swiffer is good enough. Not this is not an advertisement for Swiffer, but you know, there are people who don't have a vacuum but they have Swiffers. We have a central vac in our house. The reason that I have central vac is because I worked for a company many, many years ago and I was able to get them for kind of cost. And I installed it in my own house, but I retrofitted it in my house, which was an absolute nightmare. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But there's a market for people who will buy a central vac. And if you want a central vac, a, a standalone unit that you drive around your house with your hand and you plug it in this room and then in that room and in the other room, that's not for you. And so central vac companies aren't saying, hey, buy our central vac if you want to have the vacuum that you stuff in the closet, right? It's not for you. And their price point reflects that. Now, thankfully, I was able to get one for not much more than I would have paid for a really nice handheld one. But it's a great example because there are different, it's still vacuums and there's still cleaning products, but there are so many different options. And you have to know who you stand for and what your unique value proposition is if you're selling vacuums.
Yeah, absolutely. And in no matter what you're selling in business, it's exactly the same principle. And what do you think about the tiers of, like, you have a central vac, which I have never heard of, and I have, you have the push vac, and then you have the dust
Yeah.
buster, or the new,
Right.
there's a new gator or duck one that just is a, handheld, fits in a drawer, fits in your pocket. So
Yep.
how do you are you a fan, I should say, of different price point packages in a business?
I think that it depends on what you're selling, but yeah, sure. The good, better, best model is psychologically proven. So if you give people an infinite choice, they get stuck in something called the paradox of choice. So I don't know how to make a decision, and so therefore I don't make one. If you only give somebody one option, then they may feel that they're they just don't feel comfortable with it. But if you give people a choice of three, then you can say, well, here's the good option, and here's the better option, and it costs a little bit more. And here's the best option, and it costs the most. Or maybe there's a custom option, it's a fourth option. There, the difference with this, a lot of times people say, Well, I need to have a different price point. But they don't think about the difference in value. And so when you come to the conclusion of what your price point is, it's not $199 or $130 or $250 because it just feels like a good number. You have to actually think about what is the additional value. And the way we determine what the value is we ask the question, what do these additional service features solve for the person?
Yes.
And how much does that, what does that cost them? That increment, what is it costing them? And therefore, do you do value-based pricing? Do you do cost plus pricing? There's all kinds of different pricing models, but it's not just hey, we do these numbers because they look good, but they actually need to be tied to the value that you produce in solving the problem for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see so much of gold package, silver package, bronze package. And
Mm-hmm.
is there a danger of maybe not just going with a status quo that is so overused and doing a championship package, like naming the packages unique names?
Sure.
Is there a danger because people aren't going to know what's good, better, and best, or it just you differentiate that in within the packages?
As with so many things, the answer really depends. So if the label that you put on something
Yeah.
is abstract, then a customer is going to say, how do I, how do I, how do I know what the difference is? And this is why you see these checklists where, there's 17 items and 3 of them are checked off in the good one and 12 of them are checked off in the better and all 17 are in the best. I learned a long time ago about this idea of intention revealing names. So if you're going to put a name on something, it should reveal the intention. So in our Western society in particular, we understand this concept of gold, silver, and bronze from athletic performance. Not everybody around the world understands that, but that's kind of symbolic of good, better, and best. And I think that kind of thing can work. But when we try to get cute with things and we obscure the meaning,
Yeah.
it can start to be confusing. And so the label itself should not distract, even if it's clever. Clever is fine, but confusing is not, because there's the old saying, if you confuse, you lose.
No, I love that. Yeah. And I think people do get sometimes too cutesy with package titles and just like what. So I really rely on those check marks that, like you're talking about. Okay,
Yeah,
there's this short list, there's a longer list, and there's a giant mega list. And
sure.
that makes it clearer when you have cute package names or unique package names.
Yeah. And I also think that it has to be on brand as well. So if you're a serious business and you deal with serious things, I mean, if you were a funeral home, you probably wouldn't want to have cutesy package names, right? So so that's an extreme, of course, but you get the idea, which is, hey, if I'm kind of a little bit cheeky as a business and I want to be a little fun and whatever, then it's okay to have a little bit of fun with your package names, right? It might be that you're sort of trying to evoke. You've got elephants, right? So you got a baby elephant and you got an adolescent elephant, you got an adult elephant. I don't know, right? But people will get the idea that, hey, this is a bigger package because, hey, their theme is these very large animals. And, so other times people will name them based on the stage of your business. So if it's a starter pack or it's a growth pack or it's a enterprise pack or something like that. And now that name starts to make sense with the package. And I kind of intuitively know that I'm going to get more for that enterprise thing, but I don't really need enterprise because, man, my revenue is only $1.5 million a year. So enterprise probably isn't for me.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And again, going back to the value, it's
Mm,
do I need the enterprise package value, or am I fine with the middle package? So let me, I want to kind of turn a corner a little bit and ask about, because a big focus of yours is focusing and helping solopreneurs and entrepreneurs with the isolation that comes with
mm,
that. How
sure.
do you see solopreneurs and entrepreneurs struggling with isolation, and why are they so isolated when you see all these networking groups, all these
Mm.
connection groups, mastermind groups? I mean, you could spend your day without working on your business going to all these groups, yet people are so isolated. Why is that?
Yeah. Um, I think that's a good question, and it makes us think about the difference between activity and production.
Yeah.
We can go and we can participate in a lot of things, and that feels like we're making progress when in reality we're kind of hiding out from doing the work.
Yes.
When we start really doing the work, we encounter a lot of internal mental resistance. Most entrepreneurs are not starting something because they want to do what everybody else did. Or if they are doing what everybody else is doing, they want to do it in a different way. The problem with that is we have no idea if it's going to work. It probably won't work. Statistically, we are talking about those statistics earlier, right? Statistically, it probably won't work. So there's a lot of tension and pressure that comes with that. When we have a team, whether it's a small team or a large team, that leader, that founder, the CEO, there are a lot of things that they're grappling with that they don't feel comfortable telling somebody else.
Mhm.
And some people have impugned this and said, oh, well, that's because you're not a transparent leader. And I get that. But there is a point at which if you start telling your leadership team, hey, I really don't know how to solve this problem, and they're expecting you to know how to solve the problem. Well, the only the difficult stuff gets to the president's desk, right? The stuff that nobody else knows how to solve lands on the president's desk. And the same thing happens in business. So, hey, everybody's coming to you as the CEO or the founder in particular
Mhm.
and saying, how do we solve this? And you don't want to say, I don't know, but you need to say, I don't know. And so sometimes those pressures can cause somebody to feel like they're all by themselves. And even if they have somebody that they are confiding in on their leadership team, or maybe it's a CEO and a COO duo or something like that, even then it's still cognitive load for that founder to say, I'm going to bring this person into my confidence because they're connected and I don't know what's going to happen. And so you can kind of feel this pressure of isolation from having to be the one who makes the decision. It's the reason that Shakespeare wrote, "Heavy is the head that wears the crown."
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the saying, and I believe you have it on your website too, is it's, and we've heard it a million times, it's lonely at the top. And that, I think that top represents whether you're leading a small company, a mid-sized company, or a solopreneur. You're at the
Sure.
top. You are the only one. And it can be very lonely and isolating to have to manage everything on your own, and say you don't have others that you can go to. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Google answers? It's really hard. So what do you tell the
Yeah.
like solopreneurs that really are super, super isolated and lonely?
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about solopreneurs because it is challenging. And usually, as a solopreneur, you don't have a co-founder that you can pick up the phone at 10 o'clock at night and say, "Hey, I'm having a little flip out moment here." If you are blessed to have a spouse, then you might be talking to your spouse, and they're saying like, just please stop. I can't take this anymore. I don't know how to help you. Your friends might be saying, look, we have corporate jobs because we don't want to deal with that stuff. And we get a regular paycheck. We can't relate to you doing this thing on your own. I mean, it's cool. We really respect you and we really look up to you, but we have nothing to offer you because we can't understand that context. And so it's really critical for solopreneurs to have some kind of supporting structure around them that helps them ask those questions, and also having people ask them difficult questions. And not a lot of people are skilled. There was a study that was done a couple of years ago, and I probably could find it for you. It was commissioned by the International Coach Federation, I think. And they were talking about why executives make terrible coaches. And it's true that your friends aren't going to be able to ask you the kinds of questions that are going to help you overcome an obstacle or think about an obstacle in a different way. They're not going to be able to say to you, oh, well, when I was a solopreneur or I was an early stage person, this is what I ran into. And it may not be the same, but what if that pattern were true? Or what if it weren't true? And what could you envision then? And so it's just this idea of taking almost a second brain and putting it together with you in both a supporting and challenging mode. I think that's what it's all about in Ecclesiastes when it says that two are better than one because they have a better return for their work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes. And those older singles out there, like, and I call them mature because I am one, mature single. Uh, that poses a challenge, and I've had
Mm,
a conversation lately, conversations about when you're past 50, you've mostly already made your long-term friendships. Those are
mm,
friendships from if you went to college or if you were, just whatever your station in life, you've already made your 20 plus year friendships. And it's so difficult to make new, long lasting friendships in today's world because
mm.
everybody's so busy and they really don't seem interested. So, for my question to you with that in mind, is that for solopreneurs, what are, I would say, the top two, maybe top two or three things that they can do to stay connected? But, and you're talking about,
Yeah.
align yourself with people, but what are some things that they can do to just stay connected with the outside world?
Sure. Um, it's funny because you said some things that evoke my inner coach, and we call that coach food. It's so juicy. But last week, I think it was, or the week before, I was able to go to a short conference
Ooh.
that was held by the Sheldon Leadership Institute, I think it's called, the Leadership Center, the SLC, over at NC State University. They're housed there, and the topic was multi-generational workplaces. And it's funny because of the timing of it. What's really interesting for folks, especially over 50, in the demographic that you're describing, is that often we insulate ourselves from earlier generations or even sometimes older generations. Right now, there's 5 generations in the workplace, whatever the workplace is defined as. So there are people who are older than us and younger than us that are working, and there is something to learn from these folks. But there's also something to give, and I really strongly believe in this concept of give and get. And so one of the things that I encourage, especially solopreneurs, to do is to go to networking events where there are younger folks. Maybe they aren't just now starting out from college, but maybe they are. Or maybe they're somewhere in between. Find the ones that are related to the industry that you're in, or if you're really feeling adventurous, to go and exercise this principle from design thinking, which is divergent interests, and just go start asking questions. It's shocking how much asking a genuine question will open up a relationship with somebody, will result in a, hey, would you mind if we could grab coffee? And then you have coffee with that person, and now you're on your way to building a relationship. It may not be, you may not be calling each other and having dinner, right? Like you would with some of the people you've been journeying along with for the last 10 years, but you're creating new connection, and that new connection will do many different things, but it will also challenge you because they called it at the SLC, they talked about reverse mentoring, taking this younger person and saying, hey, how do you work in this world? What's the cool thing? And how do you do that? And what can I learn from that? And then you can go try something. And they might say, hey, what was great from your generation that we're missing that we need to know? And all of a sudden now you're in connection. You can also look for we're in the early stages of the rise of community. And there are lots of folks that are building new private communities. And it works to find one of those to go deep into and to share what's going on, what you're working on, to hear what other people are working on, and to be actively engaged in that as well. So there's some of that's social and some of that's work related. But those are a couple of ideas. The biggest thing is get out of your solo sphere, whether you're in a co-working space in your own little office or whether you're working from home, get out of that sphere, either virtually or in person, and make that intentional investment in learning about other people. And you'll be surprised at what you get from that process.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's so rich because I think we get so solopreneurs, even though I have a part-time, and I refuse to
Mhm.
call it a job. I call it an income stream, which it is. But
Sure.
it's just it's so hard when you are a full-time solopreneur to like, no, I can't do that today. No, I can't do that. No, and you get so funnel focused that I
Mm,
love your ideas because you have to be intentional and force yourself to be engaged, or else it's not healthy to spend
right.
so much time in isolation with no other human contact. And I'm not talking Zoom. People can have Zooms
Mhm.
all the time. It's not the same as being face to face with people.
Yeah, I think there's a balance for sure.
Yeah.
And I like to joke that people like my wife and I, we were made for a pandemic. The world shut down and we looked around and we said, we have to stay at home. Okay, that's what we're doing anyway. And so there is this idea too that I want to be very mindful of is we're not all made the same way. Some people are extroverts and they feel trapped when they're not having real life coffees and things like that. Other people are introverts and they feel trapped when they have to go out and talk to those people. And then there's the rest of us that would be considered amni or omniverts that are kind of straddling the line. At one point, we might be introverted. At another point, we might be sort of leaning toward extroversion. And basically, it's where do I get my energy from? So for some people, thinking about going out and having coffee with a bunch of people or going to a networking thing, it's anathematic. And they're like, yeah, it's a stressful thing. And so I would say, look for those places that are aligned with the scale that you can handle and challenge yourself a little bit. So don't go to some big, I think there was something called Rockstar Connect for a long time, and it's 100 people. If you're just a introvert or you're a sort of ambivert that trends toward introversion, don't go find the 100 person meetup. Go find the 20 person meetup or the coffee shop meetup or something like that. And so just aligning yourself with the kind of thing that will get you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but not so far over as to be paralyzing is a thing that I would consider worth thinking through as you try to come up with ways to establish new relationships. And sometimes Zoom is just as good as in person. I heard you when you said it's not. But for some people,
Not
that is a big step
true.
that if they take it, will make all the difference in the world.
That's true. It's a great uh alternative two, when you have a pandemic or something, it's a
Sure.
great alternative to stay connected with people. But yeah, I think your point is really well taken in fact, in the fact that you have to know yourself and know what energizes you and know what sucks the
Sure.
life out of you, because I love to be around people, but I'm not an extrovert. I get my energy from being
That's right.
alone, and I spend a ton of time alone. I'm okay with that, and I'm
Right.
happy with myself, and I'm fine with being at home cooking and being at
Sure.
home for days at a time. I mean, not shut in, but
Sure.
I love to be people. Oh no, you're a people person. You're a people. Well, yeah, when I'm with people, for sure.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think it's casting a balance.
what's really funny here, and we'll let people in behind the scenes a little bit. You
Mhm.
and I have never met in person, even though we've tried and it just hasn't worked out, and that's fine.
Yeah.
We will meet in person at some point. And yet I know that if I needed something, I could call you and you would
Yes.
help me. And
Yes.
you, I believe, would know the same thing about me. And
Yes.
so we have been able to cultivate a connection, even though we have never been in the same place together. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't be better, and that if we meet one on one for coffee, people will think that we've known each other our whole lives, right?
Yes.
And so it's a continuum. And so you do what you can do, and you get out of your comfort zone, and then you generously show up, and good things happen, whether they're virtual or whether they're in person. It's a mechanics of the thing that is different, and it's a subservient thing to the mindset. I think that's the key, is having the mindset of, how do I connect with a person, understand them, seek to serve, and in the process build relationship. And that, if it happens in person, it's great. If it happens on Zoom, great. The most important thing is making the connection.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And given a quick example too, I was in some kind of group, online group, and this has been a few years, probably 2020-ish, and everybody was introducing themselves, and a lady in the group, and it was probably 10 people, and she said she was in publishing, and I'm like, me being a book and publishing consultant, I'm like, ding ding ding. So I took her name down. I think I found her on LinkedIn or whatever, and all these years later, we're still, she sends me all of her
Yeah,
the Christian clients that come to her, because she doesn't deal in that genre.
sure.
And then, I have been able to help her in circumstances as well. And so
Right.
never met, she's on the other side of the country. But it's that enduring relationship. Having never met, probably never will. So
Yeah.
your point
That's
is that very
That's the
valid.
beauty of the democratizing power of technology. When not everybody has access, but when you do, you can create these things. And the other thing I would say too is, not to belabor the point, but there are probably an equal number, if not more number, of people that you have met in person that you never followed up with and you don't have any relationship with. So it's really to the point of the mindset and the attitude of where do we connect and how do we resonate and how can we help? And those things are the things that drive relationships, and not so much the proximity.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I think we did really good on that topic because it's such a big topic with the rise
Sure.
of Zoom,
Yeah,
and stuff. But I want to turn another corner before we bring it home, and I want to
sure.
talk about your book. Now, I did not help you with your book, so people get confused, like, oh, he's a client. No, you're not a client, but I'm
Right.
always excited when someone writes a book. So tell people what your book is about, why you wrote it, and what you hope to accomplish from it.
Sure. And I appreciate that. I jokingly refer to it as the book I'm pretending to write. It's been several years since I started, and then I set it down for a little while, and I picked it back up. And so I think elapsed time is now probably close to 3.5 years since I sat down and put the first word on the page. The book is tentatively titled Engineering Wisdom. And it's a little bit of a play on words. Partly it's to identify who it's for, and also what it's for. So I believe that wisdom is the timely application of knowledge. It doesn't matter what we know, it matters what we do with what we know. And yet, we do have to collect more knowledge and then know how to apply it. And so I had this idea to write this book because it's one part a memoir and one part a business book. So slotting it on the shelf, if I ever get to that point, I don't know how I'm going to manage that because, if you confuse,
It
you
will.
lose. We talked about that before. But the inception of this book started 30 years ago with a post-it note that I used to carry around with me. And when I would hear somebody say something interesting, I would write it down. Just a little quip, a little phrase or something like that. And so I can't find the post-it note anywhere. I don't know where it is. We've moved a couple of times. Who knows? It's probably somewhere here in the pile, but I don't know where it is. And so I sat down and I said, what would I want to what would I want to share from my experience with my son when he transitions from being an individual contributor as an engineer, because that's what he's studying now in college. What would I want to share with him about being a leader when he is about to take his first formal leadership position steps? And so I thought back and I thought about all of the things that I have heard people say and how have I applied those. So each chapter, after the initial orientation to what the book is and what it's for, is a story that's centered around the phrase. So the thing I heard, the context for it, and then how to apply it to leadership and working in a company, trying to help people go from one place to the next. And that's really what the book is for, is to inspire people to listen to the wisdom that is around them or to the knowledge that's around them, and then take that knowledge and figure out how to apply it in the work that they do.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a couple more questions that I asked prospective clients because it narrows the focus down. Is that who would benefit the most from reading your book? There and the top two or three, and I'd tell them everybody is not the right answer. You already know that,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
who would benefit the most from reading your book?
Yeah. Um, the answer to that is one part demographic and one part psychographic.
Okay.
The demographic is a person who is probably in their early 20s, is an engineer, got an engineering degree. These are typically really smart people who are doing crazy stuff with math and science that you and I can't even imagine. Um, and so they're really, really solid. They've been told their whole life that they're really smart and they know how to do everything. And so they've been an individual contributor. They've been recognized by their company as an up and coming leader. Maybe they've been fast tracked, or they're getting these new opportunities to be in leadership positions. And so they're making that transition to leadership. Mentally, psychographically, they're saying, hey, I want to do well at this. I don't really want to mess it up. Where can I learn more about how to do this? And so they're looking in some ways for guidance on how to have a leadership posture. And I talk about that in the intro to the book, is what is leadership? And the leadership posture is basically curious humility, right? It's
Okay.
curiously humble mindset matched up with two actions, which are listening and taking action. So it's one attitude and two actions. And so when they're open to that, if they're not open to it, they're not going to read the book. They're not going to care.
Yeah.
But if they're making that transition in their life and they want to develop their leadership posture, this book will help them.
Okay. That's good. And I'll ask you the last question. what do you want readers to think, feel, or do when they read the last page of your book?
Yeah, I want them to think about the people that are around them and what they can learn from them, not what they can teach them.
Okay, love that. Yeah, that love that. Okay, so I'm going to hold your feet to the fire and you are going
Oh
to
no,
publish this book.
accountability. Oh no.
Yes, accountability. Absolutely, because it sounds really, really helpful to abroad, even though everybody is not the target market. It could help a lot of people zero in, and I'm thinking of solopreneurs again would be
Mhm.
really helped by that, by the content. So I want to ask you, you do executive coaching because you have referred often to putting on your coach hat. What do you like best about executive coaching? What's the most rewarding thing to you?
The most rewarding thing about the work that I get to do is when I get to ask a question or a set of questions, and I get to balance wearing my coach hat and my consultant hat because I've done both and I blend the two together. And when we dig deeply into something and I see the light bulb go off for that person, and usually it's really quiet. I'll ask a question and they'll go like this. And you know, as a coach, you have to hold that awkward silence. You got to be okay with silence. It's a reason that I think it's Michael Bungay Stainer said, use the acronym, why am I talking? You just got to sit there and let them process the thing. And when they say, okay, I know what I can do with that, that to me, that right there, that's the thing. I know what I can do with that. Okay, tell me more. Right. And then they tell you what they're going to go do. And then we brainstorm things together, which is the version of coaching that I practice. And that part is super, super rewarding.
I bet. I bet it is. Seeing those light bulb moments, and you can probably, if you meet with clients on Zoom, you can probably, whether in person or in Zoom, you can probably tell, like, you see it in their eyes. Is
Yeah,
that
and a lot of times it's preceded by a lot of resistance. It
okay?
it can be I don't understand that question, or I don't know what you're asking me, or I don't know the answer. This is a fairly common occurrence. Is somebody says, "Well, I don't know the answer to that," and so my response to that is almost always, "It's okay not to know.
Mhm.
If you knew, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's a process of figuring it out. So what can you see now? Now that you are thinking about it in a different way, what can you see? What's the closest thing you can see? It's not about solving the problem, it's about taking the very next step. So if we take the very next step, what seems like a reasonable next step that would give you additional clarity or help you decide, oh, not that way, but this way instead. And that's really how we overcome that resistance, is not holding ourselves to the standard of having figured it out already. It's recognizing that we're on the journey of figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. That has to be really rewarding for you, or you wouldn't be doing it. You do a consulting, you do executive coaching, and we're going to include, all the links for Dave in the show notes and all that. But I kind of want to wrap up with a question that I always I always typically ask is what has you excited these days? What do you have in the hopper that you can reveal that really is floating your boat right now?
Well, it's funny you would ask that because I literally just before our call pushed the button on a LinkedIn post about a new community that I have created for faith-driven entrepreneurs and founders who are under $3 million of revenue and maybe have 3 to 20 employees. that are looking for a kind of a CEO or founder peer group to work together in, that meets online and is a space for connection and not feeling lonely, and also for being able to do the work together with like-minded people who understand the challenges of starting and scaling a business. So these are for folks that are in a growth or scale mode. So there's build, there's create, which is the go from 0 to 1. There's nothing and now there's something. And then there's build mode, which is, okay, I had this idea from 0 to 1. I had the bones of it, and now I have something I can bring to the market. Now, how do I grow it? And that's where we're trying to collect folks that are faith driven, looking for a community that's supportive and generous, a place they can give, a place they can get, a place they can learn and journey together for however long it takes. And it's a community that I call the Link. And it's called the Link on purpose because when we link up together, I use this climbing metaphor that if you're climbing, if you've ever climbed, there's somebody who's a belay, unless you're doing free climbing, which is crazy. It's cool, but it's crazy. But there's somebody who is at the bottom holding the rope for you while you climb. It gives you some degree of safety. It gives you some degree of support, so that you're not in it alone. And then you, in turn, help them with their ascent. And that's why it's called the Link.
I love it. And when is it going to be operational?
It is live today. So if you want, you can sign up now. We're kind of in a soft launch, so anybody between now and January gets the founding member sort of designation, and we'll do things like lock in the pricing forever as long as they're part of as long as they're part of the community and that kind of thing. It's for sort of the innovator, early adopter folks who want to help shape and participate in what it looks like and what it becomes. It's not about me. It's about everybody together supporting each other. It's not about my content. It's about the connections in the community. So it's up and running now. If they want to check it out, then they can go to the community.paravel.com site and find out more.
That is so wonderful. And we will wrap up and I will ask you, how can people connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. And the best way to do that is it's David-C-Bates is my handle, and I think you got the link for that.
Mhm.
So that's the best way to connect with me. Find me there, but then also all the other places that I think you're going to put into the show notes. So
Yes, I will. Any parting thoughts for people who are watching this or listening?
sure, my parting uh, comment is there is no reason to do this alone. We're not made to do this by ourselves. We're made to do this with others. So find the others, link up, whether it's in this community or some other community, find the people that are willing to support you and that you are willing to generously give into and build those really strong connections, because that's how you will go further.
Yeah, that absolutely, yes. I think there's a cap on if you're just going to do it alone, you are just, I don't need anybody. I don't want anybody. I think there's a cap on there somehow.
More important than the cap is the tax that will happen on your brain if you view it that way. And it's
Yeah.
okay. If that's what's right for you, that's where you are right now, that's okay. And so we're really not necessarily talking to those folks. We're talking to the folks that really do crave some connection and some support structures, and not and if feeling alone or feeling frustrated or feeling that you've hit the ceiling, that cap that you're talking about, and you haven't found the people that you can run with, that's the invitation, is find the people to run with for the next leg of the journey.
Oh, that's awesome. Such rich nuggets during this time. So Thank you, Dave. I appreciate your time and I appreciate all your wisdom and all the exciting things you have going on and everything you shared today.
Well, I am super grateful for any time that you and I get to spend together. It's always a good time. So thank you for having me.
Exactly. Me too. Me too. So, and I will put all the links for Dave in the show notes. And until next time, thank you for watching another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted.